Hi everyone, my name is Jen. Welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my weekly reading wrap up where I talk about the oodles of books that I read every week. I'm super excited for today. I have 11 to talk about today. And then I will talk about the books that I am in the middle of right now as well. But let's go ahead and get started. There's actually one that I forgot to mention last week. Because I was traveling, I wasn't able to I didn't write down every book as I do it like I do at home. And so I missed one of them. So one of the books I read last week, but didn't bring up, was Inked in Lies by Deanna Darling. This is book 5 in the Fallen Men series, and I guess there's still going to be more. This one is about Casanova Nova and his love interest, and this is another age gap. This one was really good, and I was really happy about it because books 3 and 4 were kind of frustrating for me. So there's elements of this one that had that same problem, but because we were dealing with some characters who weren't as entrenched in that issue, it didn't feel as much. And so the problem that I'm talking about, this isn't a spoiler. The problem is that the last two books 3 and 4, they basically went over the same events and they were the same people involved in the events. So it was like we were getting these events from 4 different points of view because there's 2 characters in each book and then they're each going through it, and so it just was a lot of redux. It was a lot of going over stuff I already knew about, and because these books are so long, it just felt like, especially King and Cress's book, which they have a second book in this series, it just felt like so much before we got to anything new about them, because the stuff that we read about them was in the book before with Harley, and then this one it did it again. But in Inked in Lies, we are dealing with Nova, and the beginning of this story is super powerful. I can't remember the name of the heroine. It just poof went out of my mind. But her and her brother, their father is a drug dealer and their mother is a drug addict, which makes sense. And one night the mother actually tries to kill the daughter. Sorry, it's raining outside, which is really pleasant for me as a person. I like hearing it, but distracting when wrapping stuff up. And they live next door to Nova and his family, who his name isn't Nova at this time yet, but him and her older brother become best friends. And so when she will get left at home alone at nights, either her older brother will be watching out for her or Nova will watch out for her to make sure she's safe. And one night her mother tries to kill her to basically keep her away from their father, and the father kills the mother. He gets arrested, and then this girl and her brother, who her brother's almost 18, so they get put into foster care 6 hours apart from each other. And so Nova's the oldest of 5 boys, and then his mother and father are amazing. And so Nova actually drops out of school to earn more money for the family so that his family can afford to adopt these two. So this is one of those where she feels in love with Nova her whole life. And she just feels so loved into this family. And then once they grow up, she makes her move on him, and he really kind of spurns her. So this book is it's like childhood friends to enemies to lovers. It's one of those. And it was just really, really good. And so I'm really excited for book 6. This totally got me back into the series again. And I believe I gave this one a 5-star. So that's awesome. Then I read Like Dragonflies by Kay Webster and Daniel James. This is our Taboo Book Club pick, the pick that Tamika picked for this month. This is a half brother and sister, and the story starts with them they don't know that they're related. So this is a case of they don't know they're related until they're already deep into a relationship with each other. This was really beautiful. I cried a couple times. This was definitely not the same kind of raunchy creepy level that like the Wild will be. And though the Wild, I think, is fascinating in its own right, and we will definitely, you know, be talking about the comparisons between these two, and like how one of them is just almost, it's not, how one of them is basically just like horror almost of like the worst case scenario of things, whereas this one is like, you just feel for these young people because they're only like a year apart in age and they're half siblings. So I gave it 5 stars and I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. I read Beautiful Monster by Sarah Kate. This is an age gap. This is a 19-year-old, and this really rich like playboy who's 40 moves in next door to this girl and her sister and her mom, and he is really trying to take a break from sex. He's trying to be celibate for a while because his playboy ways have really gotten him into a lot of trouble. And in fact, I feel like it's not said, but I think that he is kind of dealing with like sex addiction, and so he's really trying to make better decisions. And so this girl, she's an artist, and he catches her like painting and like hears about it, and he asks her to paint a mural for him on this one wall by his pool. And so she ends up getting this job, and he helps her kind of like realizing her dreams as an artist and like helping her move forward with them. And so yeah, this was actually really sweet, and it's called Beautiful Monster because I think of the stuff that he's struggling with, but this was actually, it was really sweet. And there's trigger warnings for an abusive parent because her mom is pretty like verbally and even physically abusive at one point to her. So that kind of pushes this girl even more towards her neighbor, who yes, very attracted to her, but also just wants to take care of her. And it was really sweet. I really enjoyed it. Then I started this series by B.B. Hamill, which it's the Possessive series. Well, it's called something else because I think they're all going to be siblings. But the first one's called Possessive Doctor. And this one, also trigger warnings for abusive parents. So we have this girl who, her father is a like rancher in Texas. And he's trying to set up this arranged marriage for her with another rancher, his son, so that they can like combine their wealth and her father will be made even richer. And when she refuses him, he pushes her down the stairs and leaves her very injured. And so the doctor part of this is she is going to a physical therapist to get her mobility back, and she has said that she was in a car accident, but her doctor, he looks at the scans and he's like, you shouldn't have brakes like this if you were in a car accident. And so he starts to, and he's attracted to her, so he kind of starts to like flirt with her and try to cajole her into telling him what happened. And as she starts to fall for him, she's like, you really don't want to get involved in this. My dad's crazy. And he's like, honey, you don't even know who my family is. And his family, who he has like run away from, they are, I don't think they have ties with the mob, but they're this really wealthy family in Virginia, and they end up getting involved, right? So I gave that 4-star. It was pretty interesting. It was okay. Then I read Possessive Boss, which is about another brother in the family, and this one is a businessman. And there's this girl who, so his business is like a trading business, and she is undercover with the FBI because it looks like this guy's business partner has been making deals with the mob and is not making the wisest business decisions. And so she is like getting a job at his place to go undercover, and they're immediately attracted to each other. It's pretty obvious that he hires her 50% for her qualifications and 50% because she's hot. This is the kind of book we're reading, so don't be surprised going in. That's what's happening. And she, because she is so attracted to him and has a connection, she admits to him, so we're actually looking into your partner because he's been making some shady decisions, and because I know that you're not involved in it, I want to admit this to you. And then they start working on it together. So it wasn't as interesting to me as the first one, and I just wasn't as intrigued by it, so I gave that one a 3. But I'm going to continue the series because there's one that, there's like possessive neighbor, there's possessive single dad, there's possessive baby daddy. There's like a whole series of these, and they're all about the family members. Like I said, the two guys from Possessive Doctor and Possessive Boss, they're brothers, and so there's a sister too and some other brothers. So then I read Valentine's Day Treat by Sam Mariano. This is just 2 short stories. One of them is from her Stitches universe, so it's a Valentine's Day with that menage relationship that is from Stitches, which I read last week. And then there's a short story about Mateo, Rafe, and Mia from the Morelli family. So it was just a sweet little Valentine's Day treat. And then there's another clipped scene that she'd cut out of the original book. So I gave that 4.5 stars. It was cute. Then I finished Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This was on my TBR, so I was really proud that I was getting through these. I read part of this on the road trip, and then I finished it when I got back. This is the next installment in the Serpent and Dove series. I gave this 5 stars. I have a much more detailed review on my Goodreads. I don't want to say too much on here because this is a sequel, but if you, for some reason, haven't heard about Serpent and Dove, it is a enemies to lovers forced marriage between a witch hunter and a witch. But the thing is, this witch, she agrees to the marriage because she's actually running from her mother, who's like a head witch. I don't know what, like the leader of the coven. And there's different kinds of magic you can do. There's like blood magic, and there is, I don't remember the other kinds. But this one starts as like there's a bit of a road trip going on. We have formed a gang of people working together, and there was a lot of secrets that got revealed at the end of the last book, and we are having to deal with the ramifications of them. This to me didn't fall into second book syndrome because it really brought a lot of new information. We got to meet a lot of new creatures. So we got to meet werewolves in this. And we talked a lot about the mermaids. I really hope we get to meet the mermaids in the next one, because please don't lay that down, Shelby, and not carry it out. Please give me the mermaids. It continues to be really brutal. I would say that because the first one, people wanted to call it new adult because of one sex scene that was in it. And I personally don't believe that just because there is a sex scene in it that it should be, like, that has to be new adult, because YA has always had some sex in it. This one has even, like, less of that. But the romance between these two people, they're having to deal with a lot of stuff. And they're still not communicating great, which was frustrating, but also believable. Because this one takes place over an even shorter amount of time than the first one. I feel like it's only like a week's amount of time, whereas the first one was, I think it was a couple months of them like starting to figure each other out. And this one is only a week. So it makes sense to me that they're still not communicating greatly, because a lot of information got dropped in their laps at the end. And they know that they love each other, but they still don't know how to communicate when they're both being really honest about themselves. So I don't hold that against them. And I feel like Reed, who is the one people are most annoyed with, ooh, that's my lunch. My lunch is going to be ready for me. Who people are most annoyed with, like, I understand his point of view. So even though it is frustrating and you're like, would you just accept this woman? You decided you loved her. Why are you being like this? He's having to shift his entire worldview, because he said witches are bad and they're evil and they kill people, and now I'm in love with one. How do I reconcile this? So I have a lot of slack for Reed, and I feel like he makes really great strides. And I also think that Lou, she is unbending in the other way, because she knows that witches do bad things, and I wish she would take the time to like walk through some of this with Reed, but we don't have time. Like, we don't have time to do that. We're down to the clock. So anyway, I'll stop talking about this. I have more detailed thoughts on my Goodreads, which is always linked down below in my link tree if you want to check that out. Also, just a reminder of this too, I always forget to remind people, and then people will ask me. Pretty much every book that I talk about, I have listed in my Amazon store. This is just where I have my like affiliate links. So if you end up getting like a Kindle copy or an audiobook or whatever, if you go through my link, I get a small commission from them. Like it's so small, it's not a thing. but mostly I like to use it because it has like my recommendations basically. So if you know, I know people say to me, they're like, I always have my Goodreads open when you're talking about books. That's great. If you ever want to see it, you know, listed of all the books that I talk about, I have them listed by like monthly what I read, and then based on the trope videos that I make, they're listed in there. So feel free to check out my Amazon store link, and it will have like lists of all the books that I talk about. Whether or not you end up purchasing them there, that's totally fine. It's just a place for me to concisely put everything. Okay? Okay, enough of a PSA. All right, then I read another book on my TBR. I'm so proud of myself. I read How to Love a Duke in 10 Days by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the first book in the, what's the series supposed to be called? I can't remember what it's going to be called, but it has something to do with like bad boys or whatever. But this book was so good. She actually like, she dedicates this to every survivor in like the hashtag #MeToo thing, and you can definitely tell that. So if you've never read Kerrigan Byrne before, hi, hello, I love her. You should read The Victorian Rebels. I want to work on reading some of her other series because she has some that are self-published that I want to read as well. She has other Highland books, but this one particularly is about a girl named Lady Alexandra Lane, and when her and her two friends were at boarding school, they would get together secretly and dress up like men and just like smoke cigars and pretend that they didn't have a care in the world, because they all had ambitions that were very manly. Like she's very interested in like being a doctor and in archaeology, and her friend wanted to travel the world, and so they all agreed to basically never marry and to like stay virgins, I think is what their plan was or whatever. But then the headmaster at their school finds out that they've been stealing things from him and that they've been dressing like men. And this guy is a sadistic jerk. And so first Alexandra thinks he's just going to whip her, but he bends her over his desk, lifts up her skirts, smacks her with his belt, and then starts raping her. And Alexandra reaches forward onto his desk where he had laid out all the things she'd stolen from him, and one of them was a shaving razor. And she grabbed the razor, reached back, slit his throat, and killed this man who was raping her. And so her two friends and then the groundskeeper at the school helped her bury the body, and they kept this a secret. But the thing is, Alexandra, somebody outside of her group knows that she did this. And so they have been blackmailing her for, I think it's supposed to have been 10 years or so. Yes, because she's like 27 now. And she's literally bled her family dry paying this person off. I'm going to put the book down. She's literally bled her family dry paying this person off. And she doesn't know what to do anymore. So she gets a letter from one of the other friends. I think it's Francesca. Her friend Francesca is going to be marrying the Duke of Redmayne, Pierce. And it's going to be like a boring match because her friend Francesca her family is really wealthy. And so they all get invited to it. And it becomes really clear that Francesca and Pierce don't really want to marry each other. And Francesca doesn't really need to marry this guy. So Alexandra makes a play for him. And she asks him to marry her. And he's super intrigued by her. There's some really great chemistry going on. And he agrees to it. And she's super nervous about it because, you know, she knows that she's not a virgin anymore. And she also has a lot of trauma associated with how she was assaulted. And Pierce, so anyway, that's the setup. That's what we're dealing with. They agree to get married. That's the thing. I gave this a 4.5. And the reason that it isn't a 5, because pretty much all Kerrigan Byrne's books, except for The Duke in her other series, are a 5-star for me. Because I think she does an amazing job showing trauma for both hero and heroine and that. This has a thing in it that I really, really don't like. So I'm gonna put a spoiler, and if you don't want to know this spoiler, just, skip till it's gone. This has the trope in it that men can tell if women are virgins or not just by feeling. And I just hate that. And so Pierce, he is the sweetest. He really is. He's so sweet. He has a bad name, you know, like the Beast does. He's called the Terror of Terrorborn or whatever, but he's a hero. He is. But because he has a scar, everyone thinks he's bad, blah, blah, blah. You've read it before in a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But he agrees to all her conditions because she makes a list of all these conditions of like how she wants sex to happen because she's very nervous. So she's like, I don't want it to happen from behind. I don't want you to lick me any place because these are all the things that were done to her. So she's like, I don't want you to lick me. I don't want you to lick me anywhere. I want you to be gentle and slow and from the front, and that's the only way I want to have this. And he kind of is like chuckling and he's like, okay. He thinks it's because she's a doctor that she thinks this. But then they're getting worked up to having sex, and when he can tell she's not a virgin. And so the reason this is called How to Love a Duke in 10 Days is that it's 10 days until her period's supposed to happen. And he's like, I've been lied to before, so until you have your period and I know that you're not pregnant with someone else's baby, I'm not going to have sex with you penetratively. Which, from his point of view and coming from the past that we know about him, I understand. But the thing that I don't like is that he could just feel that she wasn't. Anyway, okay. Spoiler stuff is done. So this is basically what I talked about in that spoiler if you did skip is why this is called How to Love a Duke in 10 Days. And basically there ends up being a particular reason why that even once they're married that they need to wait 10 days before they consummate that. And Alexandra just wants to spend time with him and become really close friends. She's like, how about we just get to know each other and care about each other, and then once it's time for us to consummate, like, I'll feel even better about it because I'll trust you. So here's the thing. Besides that thing that I mentioned in the spoiler part, Pierce was amazing. And the reasons why he's kind of an ass during that situation, I forgive him for. I buy it. I don't buy him knowing that he should have a problem with it. I'm like, okay, maybe I just don't know something, but I feel like that you wouldn't be able to tell that. So I still loved it. It's Kerrigan Byrne, and there was a really great mystery running through, like who is blackmailing her, and watching her get over trauma, and Pierce being a loving and supportive husband besides one little thing. And this has a wonderful grovel. That's the thing too, because the thing he does, it's really assholey, but I was excited because Kerrigan Byrne, she does a great grovel. She has had her heroes grovel well for me before. So I was like, you know what? The bigger the jerk that they are, the better the grovel's going to be. And the self-flagellation that he does when he realizes, which it's so dumb because you're like, you know, there's another possibility for this, which doesn't even enter his mind. I love it. I love it. Okay. So then I read Old Flame by Sam Mariano. So this is book 8 in the Morelli family. I really liked it. I only gave this one a 4-star though, because Dante, man, he's just not as charming as Matteo is the thing. So Dante doesn't do anything worse than Matteo has done, but he's not as smooth at it. And so anyway, but this is Colette and Dante, and they dated when they were young, and then Colette got freaked out by what she was seeing happen in this mob life, and she's like, I could die here. You know, like if you ever don't believe me someday about something I say, you could just off me and no one will stop you. And that's true. It's true. So he lets her go and lets her move on. And it's been like 5 years or so. And she's about to marry someone else. And Dante's like, hell no, I let you go, but you weren't ever supposed to love anyone but me. And so he goes and takes her back. And that happens. Sam Mariano, you're crazy. So then I read Den of Vipers by K.A. Knight. Whew! This was a good one this week, guys. Holy bananas. All right. So this is a mafia reverse harem. I don't like reverse harems, or I thought I didn't. I might be changing my mind. It might be happening. This is about a girl named Roxy, and her father is a scumbag, and he owes the Vipers, which it's a group of 4 brothers. 2 of them are actual brothers. The other 2, they're adopted into this, and they're the Vipers, and they're the mafia. They run this mafia, and there's the head, the face of everything. There's the enforcer. There's like their spy, and there's their weapons expert, and they're this family. And Roxy's loser husband or dad sells her to the Vipers, and they go first. They send a group, and so Roxy, she's 24, 25. Roxy owns a bar, and she's a badass. She carries a bat like Negan, like wow. And so the Vipers send these goons to come pick her up and bring her back to their compound, and she whoops their butt. Like, they just think it's going to be an easy grab, and she just goes like Harley Quinn on their butt and beats their butt with her bat. And so then the Vipers go to pick her up themselves, okay? So this is, what's their name? I think it's Ryland, Diesel, Kovo, and I can't remember the last name, but they all go to pick her up. And she's not able to get away this time. And they bring her back to the compound, and they're like, you belong to us now. And you can either, but they're very impressed by the fight that she puts up. They're just like, who is this woman who like didn't cry when her dad sold her to us? And so she just is constantly just like going at them. And they're all really into her. That's what I'll say. It's a reverse harem, so it's going to happen. Trigger warnings, there is a lot, okay? There is some NC, some CNC, some blood play, knife play, breath play. Like, if it exists, it's there. It's a lot, okay? It's a lot. Check it out. But this was fascinating, and it's great. This is a standalone book, but it was 650 pages, and I liked that because I really felt her relationship with each one of these people, and they're all different. And it's one of the, like, it's probably the first reverse harem I've read where I was like, I actually see this. I mean, I don't see this being real, but I get it in the context of this story that K.A. Knight built for me. I get it, and I liked it. So you'll definitely see that book talked about in some dark romance shortly. Then I read Act Your Age by Eve Dangerfield. This was a DGLG book I've had on my list for forever. This is an age gap. It is a 25-year-old and a 45-year-old. They work together at an engineering firm, and they've both kind of been having the hots for each other, but have been keeping it on the DL. He is like not totally her boss, but someone who's like above her in the company still. And she's been trying to like, she's very shy. And then one night there's a mix-up, and she ends up in his hotel room because she passes out, and he doesn't have her key to put her back in her hotel room. So when she passes out, she was with someone else, and that person was a creep. And so he like takes her back from that person and has to bring her to his hotel room. And then she wakes up and starts going down on him, and she can't remember his name. So when he says, say my name, she says, Daddy. And he's like, oh, this is what I wanted. And then she realizes who it is when she comes out of her stupor and is like, oh my damn, no, this wasn't supposed to happen, but now they can't stop thinking about each other. So I gave this one a 4-star, mostly because the hero didn't grovel enough for me, because they end up going into a DGLG relationship where she's not the leader because he's the daddy in this, but she's the one who's been looking into kink. And so she already knows like what her limits are and like what her safe word is and like all these things. And he never does the same amount of research as her because he just is like, older and just thinks that it's fine doing things this way, and he just doesn't have enough care. And so she's into this relationship with him, but there are different things that she wants from a daddy than what he is doing for her, and she doesn't feel strong enough to like mention them, so the communication's not great. And when she's finally brave enough to say something about it, I feel like he doesn't grovel enough. So that was my main problem. This was still pretty fascinating. I really liked that it did talk a lot about the aspects because she had done a lot of research. And so when we'd have her chapters, we'd hear about like the research she'd done and what she'd looked into. And I really appreciated that. So I gave this 4 stars. And then the last book I want to talk about that I finished is I Gotta Read Sacrifice by Katie Robert. If you watched my most anticipated releases for the rest of the year, you knew that like this book was coming out at some point, but I didn't know when it would be. And then Katie finished it, and because I'm part of her Patreon, we get it before it even gets sent to people as ARCs. So this was her Vampire Bloodline series, and so it's kind of hard to explain. I put a better review on my Goodreads of it, but this is also going to be a reverse harem. So really, because I knew this book was coming out, is why I read Den of Vipers, because it was mafia and it was reverse harem, and I was like, I need to read some more reverse harem. So just the cars today, come on. And this is about this girl who she's half vampire, half something else, and she gets given to this vampire Malachi who's trapped in this mansion, and her dad sends her there to be this guy's like blood slave and also to get her pregnant because he wants a baby that belongs to this guy. She's injured because she tried to run away before because she didn't want to be this person's blood slave, love slave, whatever, and her dad hurt her horribly, so now she is injured and she can't run away. And so she gets given to Malachi, and Malachi has a friend Wolf and a friend Ryland, and there is secrets about her blood that we don't know. And also, whenever you get fed on by one of these vampires, you instantly find pleasure from it. So it takes away the incentive for you to run away, basically. My only complaint, as always, is it's too short. And thankfully, this one is going to be like a trilogy, so all the books are connected together. The next one's going to be Consort, and then Queen, I think, is the third one. So when we get all 3 of them, hopefully it'll just feel like one book. But her book, I know she gets the content out quick. She does. But they're always too short for me. But this one has a really good world building for what it has already, and I'm really excited to see how she expands into the next 2. So, goody, goody, goody. Really liking it. Just one quick note I'll mention quickly. Next Sunday, remember, the live show is going to be for The Secret. It'll be at 2 p.m. Central Time on my channel. I'll have some guests, my friend Izzy, I think my friend Bree, my friend Lynn, and Laurel, I think, is going to be on it. I read The Secret last week and I loved it. So next week at 2 p.m., be there to talk about The Secret. And I'm reading Crescent City. I'm over halfway done. Loving it. Going great. And yeah, my TBR is going really well this month so far, and I'm really happy about it. So there you go. That's everything I read this week so far. It's been good. So thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.